portrayal of women in film has come far. I mean, we actually have conversations in movies now, and we actually talk about things other than men and what they're doing. We have female superheroes and princesses that are the heroes of their own story. Princesses that don't need to be saved by a prince. It's amazing. I mean, we've called it out and made a change. But what else could be done? I'm Ella Greenwood, a filmmaker and the founder of a female-focused production company. And I believe the industry hasn't progressed fast enough with the positive portrayal of women on screen. I've always been a huge fan of movies. I grew up with an absolute love of cinema, of being in the movie theatre, the popcorn, the escapism, the stories unravelling in front of me. One of the first films I remember loving was Narnia. I loved it so much that I frequently wore the lead character Lucy's costume, and in case you haven't seen the film, this wasn't jeans and a t-shirt, this was more a medieval style dress, a little red cape included. I wore it wherever I could, restaurants, supermarkets, at home. I even cut my hair to the same length that this character's was. You could definitely say I was heavily influenced by films. When I was 13, I decided I wanted to become an actor. I auditioned for all kinds of projects. I had plenty of rejection and a couple of roles here and there. And then when I was 18, I decided to start filmmaking. I wanted to make my own film and to tell my own story, but no one knew who I was. I hadn't gone to film school, I had no credits or experience, and so I started a company. I thought I would just come up with the name and logo and register on Companies House, and then without properly thinking through what I was doing, I now had a business, and then with that, plenty of plans for the future. It was nerve-wracking creating work for the first time, but I wrote a script about teenage depression, which was something that I had experienced. So no one could tell me that what I wrote was wrong because it was my truth. Being on my own and taking myself seriously, I thought, others will do the same, surely. I'm still deciding if that's the case, but what I do know is that I've experienced seeing movies and I've experienced making them. And what I've noticed throughout this time are the ways that women are presented in film and the ways that they're not. Growing up, I took in a lot from what I saw. Yes, I saw this character from Narnia who was brave and strong, and there was other characters I loved like Hermione Granger and Katniss Everdeen, and it was amazing. But I also took so much else on board from these characters, more specifically, how they looked. Very often, it always felt like a replication, different characters, different strengths, but the same visual image. We were told we could be the hero of a story if we fit a certain kind of standard. We were told who deserves love, who deserves to be a main character, who deserves to be that hero. I don't know a single female around me who hasn't struggled with body image at one point in time. According to the National Eating Disorders Association, numerous studies have linked exposure to the thin ideal in traditional mass media to body dissatisfaction and disordered eating amongst women. We still don't see enough variation of body types on our screens. According to the latest C. Jane report of 2023, only 6.1% of all characters in popular programming were plus-sized. Now, growing up, I knew that I wanted to see powerful female characters. I knew that that's what I loved, but I also just loved storytelling. I loved different worlds and stories that took me away from my reality. Though I soon began to have a certain expectation that if a female character was strong, then she must have gone through an atrocious event to get there. Something that I loved as a teenager, Twilight. Vampires, werewolves, romance, of course I enjoyed it. But I really remember this one scene where one of the characters, Rosalie, was brutally beaten by her fiancé. This scene really stuck with me, and I didn't understand why. There was other violence, other dramatic moments, but I could always remember this one scene so vividly. At the time, I thought it was as far removed as vampires existing, or it should have been. But I didn't see vampires in every film after that. I did frequently see women being abused, and it wasn't something that was just mentioned, it was always something that was shown. There always had to be some attack, some struggle, something to overcome, and these were just something that we began to accept. The industry also has a tendency to cast women as mothers and wives. But then what you get are the actors playing these mothers and wives, well, they don't really match the age. The industry tends to cast actors in their 20s, often pushing 30 actually, and have them as high schoolers and teenagers. But then what you get is these young women, they go from playing teenagers up until the age of 30, and then all of a sudden they're mothers. Angelina Jolie was 1 year older than Colin Farrell when she played his mother in Alexander, but that was Hollywood and that was 2004. So what about more recent things, such as Normal People, where Sarah Greene played Paul Mescal's mother even though she was 11 years older than him? Or what about The Greatest Showman, where we go from following these two young kids at the start who are the same age, and then these kids turn into adults who were played by Hugh Jackman, who was 49 at the time, and Michelle Williams, who was 37. The actors suddenly aren't the same age anymore. The actor playing the wife is interestingly younger and under 40. And again, this is just something we accept. We go from childhood seeing these stories of adventure, and then as teenagers seeing stories of romance and abuse, and then we don't really get to see what goes beyond a woman's journey after this, other than being a wife and mother and a younger looking version at that. We accept that we either fit this form of beauty or this certain narrative, or else we must accept just being secondary characters. One of my first times being on a big set, I remember thinking, oh, there's a lot of men here. There were a couple of women, sure, but they filled the roles of costume and makeup. And I was a teenager here, and up until this point, I'd spent most of my life in school. A mixed school of relatively equal numbers of boys and girls where we were taught the same. But now, my first time being somewhere like this, on a big set with a big group of people, you could see the imbalance. You could see the disproportion of the women in the crew and the disproportion of the roles they filled. A report by the San Diego State University shows that 8% of top-grossing films employed 10 or more women in key behind-the-scenes positions, in contrast to 70% employing 10 or more men. I was once a producer on set, and I was assumed by a crew member to be working in costume, despite sitting in a producer's chair and not being near any clothes at all. I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, I was so used to it, so I was so desensitized to these kind of expectations because we still have them. And we still have the lack of numbers behind the camera, from the runners on set to the executives greenlighting projects. And I mean, these executives, they decide on the characters that we grow up with, the characters that the large majority of us see, who we decide to be inspired by, who fuel stereotypes about what a woman can and can't be, about what a woman should and shouldn't look like. There have been 96 Best Director Oscars awarded since the award's inception in 1929. And out of those 96, only 3 have gone to women. There may still have only been 1 female director nominated at this year's Oscars, but there's also always something to feel positive about. I may have worked on that male-dominated set, but I have also since worked on sets that have been predominantly women. People want to make change, and it is so exciting. It's because of films like Wicked and The Substance that women achieved gender parity in big screen lead roles for the first time ever in the UK and US in 2024. Wicked, a film about being different, led by a powerful female character. The Substance, a film about the difficulties that women face when aging. And yes, this may have involved a black market cell-replicating drug, and Wicked may involve flying broomsticks and talking animals, but we still see new portrayals of what it means to be a woman in these films. And we can celebrate that out of the top 100 grossing films of last year, women led the same percentage as their male counterparts. Stories about women, positive portrayals, they can make money, but they can also change beliefs, and that's what changes lives. It doesn't take violence or assault for a woman to become strong, for a woman to be transformed into a character that we want to watch. It doesn't take a young, slim, and beautiful actor for an audience to want to follow a character's journey. The portrayal of women in film is slowly changing, and we must continue to fight for that change. As an industry, what can we do? We hire more female filmmakers, female writers, directors, producers. We pay them fairly. we promote their work equally. And as audience members, we show up. We invest in films about women, films made by women, and we support them. We prove that it isn't a bad business move to tell stories about women. It isn't out of pity or to tick boxes. It's because there's a real audience for it. Women are half the population, and we deserve better, more positive portrayals on our screens. And we deserve them now. Yeah.